Hello and welcome, guys. Today we're going to talk about empathy and what it means, how to do it. It's our third communication skill. Empathy is extremely important, whether you are raising a child, talking with customers, arguing with your parent or with your partner, and so on and so on. Empathy is important in any kind of communicational situation, almost any kind. What is empathy? It's kind of difficult question. First of all, let's separate empathy from sympathy. Being sympathetic means that you are just kind of expressing some more shallow concern with the other person and like shallow kind of care. I use the word shallow not to make it seem bad, but to just describe the depth of connection here. Like, for example, sympathy, when you, oh, I'm sorry that you fell, are you feeling okay? It's not really empathy, it's more like sympathy. Like if somebody fell down and you're approaching them. Sympathy can also be used in some things, like if you are not very close, if you're talking to your colleague, or if you're talking to your business partner, or somebody who is not extremely close to you yet, or just moderate close. However, sympathy, most people can do sympathy. It's like, oh, you feel hurt, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry that this happened to you. Most of us can do it. So today we're going to talk more about empathy. How is empathy different? It's deeper understanding, and the other person feels deeper connection with you. And when you are empathetic towards someone, you kind of feel closeness to their feelings, and you reflect how they feel, and they feel understood, they feel that you are with them, that you are close to them, and that you are understanding towards their experience of this feeling. Empathy helps us to process our emotions. This is why it's so important that if a child is crying, for their parent to be empathetic, because this helps the child to process the emotion and not to have any kind of trauma after this emotion. However, there are several myths about empathy. First of all, some people confuse empathy with mind reading, or some kind of like, oh, I have this ability to guess what another person is thinking and I can feel how they feel and so on. I encourage you to stop having this kind of ideas, because first of all, we oftentimes make mistakes about what others feel or why they behave the way they do, and it's much better to have this I don't know approach than to imagine that you have some kind of empathetic abilities. Okay, so this is one way in which it can be harmful. Second way is that oftentimes when we imagine we know what the other person is thinking, we start believing it, we start going anxious about it, and it hurts our own mental health and our relationship with this person. And yeah, these are two main reasons. So empathy is not mind reading. Empathy doesn't mean that you can guess what the other person is thinking or feeling and so on. Empathy includes asking what they feel. Asking, you don't know. Maintain this I don't know position, and this kind of curious, open position to what the other person is feeling. Don't assume that they feel the same way you would feel, that they would act the same way that you would act, and so on. Everybody is different, especially if you are like different cultures, different genders, different socialization paths in your past, and so on. It's also extremely important because when you assume you know what the other person is thinking, or when you're trying to guess what they are thinking, it can not improve your relationship, but kind of make them feel like you're invading in their personal space, or kind of behaving like you're above them, or something like that. Like, there is certain level of respect towards someone's privacy, their own unique soul and internal world, when you don't say like you feel that, But when you ask, like, how do you feel? Why do you feel this way? How does this experience feel for you, and so on. And another important thing, another important myth that people have about empathy is imagining that being empathetic means feeling the same emotion as the other person. And this, of course, is not true. First of all, when you are trying to feel what the other person is feeling, you are just taking the attention from them, from their emotions, and shifting it to yourself. And this way you're no longer in contact with their emotions, you're more kind of getting yourself in the similar emotions. So this is not very nice for them, this is not very nice for you. It can also lead to this empathetic burnout for some people. And this fear of burnout is what oftentimes makes us feel afraid of being empathetic, or what makes us pretend like we don't notice that the other person is upset because we don't want to feel upset ourselves, and so on. In reality, empathy cannot lead to burnout if you do it the right way. And empathy doesn't mean you feel what the other person is feeling. It doesn't mean that you are putting yourself in their place completely, and so on. Empathy is more like being in contact with their emotions while not thinking how you would feel at their place, but kind of seeing how they feel, how they experience it, what it feels like to them, not to you. And if you know how to do empathy right and you have this skill, it won't be that draining for you. On the opposite, you will feel happier after talking to someone, and they will also feel happier. In general, humans get incredibly happy just by socializing, extremely, especially when it concerns like sharing deep emotions and so on. So, how to do empathy properly? Structure of any empathetic sentence can be like that. First of all, you ask this kind of introductory question about your understanding, like, do I understand you right that? Or did I hear you right that? I see that blah blah blah. Do I understand you right? So first of all, any empathetic replic should include your question, like, do I understand it right? Do I hear you right? Do I see your feelings correctly? And so on. And here it's really important. We don't know what the other person is feeling. We cannot guess it. And even if we can, it's kind of impolite to just kind of say things confidently as if you know how the other person is feeling 100%. So this part of structure is really important. Question, do I understand you right? Second, what we name their feelings. Like, do I understand you right that you feel anxious, or that you feel worried, or that you feel upset, or that you feel melancholic, or that you feel tired? So, second, we name feeling. Third, we name connection of that feeling with situation, or with action, or with some event. Like, for example, you say, do I understand you right that you feel guilty about the way you behaved with your wife, let's say? Or do I understand you correctly that you behaved not in accordance with your values, and because of it you feel upset? So we kind of connect it to some event, or to some meaning, or to some reason that the person has for their emotions. It can also be something like, do I understand you correct that you feel upset because you didn't sleep well enough today, or something like that. Of course, I'm sorry, I'm making it sound so like artificial intelligence speaking and not a real human. It doesn't sound very natural. I'm doing it to just explain the structure, and then you can adapt it to sound more natural. So first we ask, do I understand you correctly? Secondly, we name the emotion and that the other person is feeling. And third, we name the connection of this emotion with some event or reason for that emotion. And fourth is we name the other person who is involved. Like, for example, do I understand that you feel guilty because you shouted at your son. So son is the other. Of course, in some situations we don't have the other person, but in most situations when we have some kind of emotions, there is this other person. It can be even ourselves. Like, do I understand correctly that you feel guilty about yourself not following your own values, and for this you kind of feel guilty in front of yourself? Or that, do I understand that you feel angry at yourself for this and that? So then we add the other person, in front of whom we feel our emotions, or in presence of whom we feel our emotions. Other things that we can include in empathetic phrase is the role of the other person, or like their persona. It can be like, do I understand you correctly that you, as a manager, as a father, as a teacher, as a lover, as a person, as a woman, as a man, so their role in which they experience certain emotions. This can also be included in empathetic phrase. All of these elements and the whole structure can be adapted to sound more natural. The most important part is, firstly, you ask if you understood correctly. You can use your own phrasing for this, but the meaning should be like that, that you are not certain how the other person feels, you ask them about it. And second, that you name their emotion, their feeling that you think they are experiencing right now. It can be very, very different. You might ask why, for example, we are posing this persona thing, like saying like you feel guilty as a father, or you feel upset as a mother, or you feel ignored as a child. Ignored is not a feeling, it's a thought. Feeling would be sad. You feel sad as a child, and so on. Why we do it, why we introduce persona? Because it can help the person to kind of limit this emotion to one sphere of their life. Like, they can be upset as a mother, but at the same time happy as a boss, a manager, a writer, or something. So this is why we introduce persona. It can help us to kind of localize the experience and not let it generalize on all of the person's life, and not let it spread. This kind of persona can also be expressed via some metaphor. Like, for example, you as a knight in shining armors go into this room and everybody is in awe, well, I forgot this word, like in admiration, something like that. Or you, as a small ship lost in the sea, feel so uncertain about your future. So instead of persona, you can also add metaphor here if you want. It's also really important. You can also use many other different kinds of empathetic phrases. It's just important that you use some of them, and you can choose what phrasing is appropriate in your culture, in your language, in your situation, in your relationship, in your particular relationship with that person. And then it helps you to make it more alive. And also pay attention that you can replace any of these elements in this structure. Like, for example, instead of saying, do I understand you correctly, you can say like, I hear it this way, is it true? Or I see it this way, is it really like that? Or I see you, blah, blah, blah. So you can replace it with other wordings, as well as, instead of saying you feel guilt, you can say you are overwhelmed by guilt, or you are, I don't know, destroyed by something, or you are pierced through by this emotion, and so on. Like all kinds of expressive words, you can use them. But our goal is not to make it sound very pretty, but to make the other person feel understood. And this kind of metaphorical language can oftentimes help the other person relieve the tension, and to kind of transfer their emotion to some image, and it helps them to go through this. Yeah. Another thing that can be included in our empathetic sentence is level of intensity of emotion, or level of its impact on the person. It also can be different, so really important to pay attention. Like for example, the other person can be a little bit upset, a little bit angry, or they can be terribly upset, terribly angry, or they might feel completely in despair. So it's really important in empathy that you're not trying to kind of argue with the person how they're feeling. Feelings are always correct, and you are just reflecting them. Like if the other person is sounding like they're very desperate and they are saying they have no hope and so on, you can't say to them like, I see that you feel completely desperate. Is it true? So you can use such kind of big words like completely, terribly, and awfully, and so on and so on. And interestingly, it doesn't make the other person feel more upset if you actually reflect how bad they're feeling. On the contrary, it makes them feel relieved. But if you start arguing and saying like, oh, you cannot be that upset, it's not that upset, and you don't have any reason to be upset, this is invalidating of their emotions, and this is ruining the whole empathetic exercise, so don't do it. So you can also give this kind of judgment about the strength of emotion, also about the person's ability to control this emotion. Like for example, say like you are feeling irresistible jealousy or something like this. Or you can also mention their ability to tolerate this emotion, like intolerable, or you are feeling bored and you cannot tolerate it, or something like that. So all kinds of nuances you can ask them and add to your empathetic phrase. And it's important, you are not trying to make them feel more optimistic, you are not trying to solve their problems, you are not trying to push them to certain solution, you're not trying to make them understand that nothing is that bad, that everything is okay. You are just listening and reflecting, listening and reflecting, listening and reflecting, and your goal is just to be with them during this whole process. Emotions and feelings are not scary, they pass quite fast when we just let them be. So most likely after such empathetic conversation, the other person will feel so much better, so much better. Even if their problem is not solved, they got this empathy and it helps them enormously. Yeah. And also, while the other person is getting so much empathy and attention from you, they are getting new experience of being validated in their feelings, understood and accepted and loved despite how they feel. They get new experience of their feelings being accepted and being okay and being fine. And they get this new experience that sharing emotions, sharing feelings helps to process them. They also get this new experience that when you find a name for something, it's much easier to process for many people. Like if you name emotion and you together discuss what kind of emotion it is, it's also much easier to process it. And it's completely normal. And very interestingly, if you make this empathetic exercise, it's curious how people are attentive to you giving them exact word for the emotion, and you can discuss together what kind of emotion it is. Like for example, you say, I see that you feel very angry, am I right? And they say like, not really angry, maybe just kind of annoyed and irritated, and like I have a lot of energy inside and want to fight. Okay, so they can make it more precise how exactly that they feel, and it's kind of like interpersonal therapy, to be honest. And it's especially beneficial to do empathetic remarks if you have children, or any person who is very upset or very emotional near you. And this is the way to react to any tantrums or tears, or a person being too emotional in their experience. And also, doing this empathetic exercise, you learn yourself to accept emotions as some kind of part of human experience. And you know, as some people, they are trying out wine or food and they enjoying it, and they are paying attention to different tastes and textures and so on. Or an artist who looks at the sky and tries to paint it, they're gonna pay attention to shadows and how it changes and how the lighting falls, and so on and so on. And we do the same with emotions when we engage in this empathetic conversation. And it can make emotions not only bearable, but also wonderful, and actually wonderful life experience. And such moments of sharing how we feel with another person and getting understood, or us understanding the other person in their emotions, are wonderful moments of connection, and they can remain in your memory like as most happy memories in your life. um yes, so what can we do else? More or less, that's it about empathetic remarks. I hope it was interesting for you, and feel free to experiment to create your own phrases. It's for beginning, it's useful to have your own kind of ready-made templates of how you're gonna talk. And you guessed it right, your home task will be practicing this exercise with other people, talking with them, and preferably at least 3 person should be your like patient, let's say. If you can do more, and please let me know how it goes in the comments. I will be very happy to know. And now I need to run, and goodbye.